So we're going to have a look at how to answer this judgment question. First of all, you might want to pause the video for a second and just read through the question for yourself before I talk to you about it. Okay, so what we've got here is a 16-mark judgment question. Let's have a look at what we need to do to tackle this question successfully. First of all, like all judgment questions, it begins by giving us a statement which we have to evaluate. That means we have to say whether we agree with it or not. And the statement we've been given is this: there was rapid change in ideas about disease in the period 1700 to 1900. So we have to say whether or not we think that's correct. It's got quite an interesting phrase here, rapid change. Now, rapid change means very fast change, change that happens quickly. So we need to think about, is that really true? Was this period 1700 to 1900 really a time of very fast change? Now, we're asked, how far do you agree? And that means we need to explain both sides. That means we need to agree with the statement, and we also need to put forward some points to challenge the statement as well. And because it's a 16-mark question, we're going to need a little introduction. We're going to need to write 3 main paragraphs, each one about a different topic, and we're going to need a quick conclusion at the end as well. Now, we're given some tips on what we could include in our answer. Look here. Here are 2 topics that we could write about. We might write about spontaneous generation in our answer, and we might write about Louis Pasteur, but we don't have to. We can choose our own topics if we prefer. However, if we want to hit the top level, we need to make sure that we also bring some information of our own. So we need at least one more topic that we've brought for ourselves in order to hit that top level. So let's think about the structure of our answer. We could think about it a little bit like the body of a fish, right? So the start of our answer will be our introduction, and that's where we tell our reader what our topics are going to be. What are we going to be writing about in our answer? Then we're going to have the main body of our answer. These are our main paragraphs. We're going to write 1 paragraph about each of our 3 topics. And when we do that, we're going to try to make sure that our answer has some balance. That means we are going to write some paragraphs that agree with the statement, and maybe we'll have a paragraph that disagrees. At the end, the tail of our fish is the conclusion. And that's where we give our overall decision, and we also put forward and summarise our winning points. So let's think about what we're going to put in our main paragraphs. I'm going to put the question up in the top right hand corner again, and there's the statement that we are evaluating. There was rapid change in ideas about disease in the period 1700 to 1900. So we're going to write 3 paragraphs about this period. Our first paragraph is going to be about the first section here from 1700 up until the 1860s. This was a time when there wasn't really any change at all in ideas about disease. Scientists and doctors believed in spontaneous generation, and they blamed disease on miasma. Our second paragraph is going to be about the 1860s, and here there was some slow change in ideas about disease. Pasteur, as you know, came up with his germ theory in 1861. However, his germ theory did not spread very quickly in Britain, and we'll talk about why that was in a moment. So slow change there. Our third main paragraph is going to be about what happened from the mid-1870s onwards. And there was really rapid change, and that was largely thanks to the work of Robert Koch, who did he made some great discoveries on microbes and bacteria, and his work led to some really rapid change in ideas about disease. So we've got 3 topics that we're going to write about. I'm going to talk to you now briefly about each one. So let's look a little bit closer at what we're going to put in our main paragraphs. Our first paragraph is going to be about spontaneous generation. Now, you'll remember that this was the idea that rotting matter turns into microbes. And these microbes spread through the air through miasma, bad smells. This idea of spontaneous generation was around for a long time. It lasted from 1702 to 1861. So this was a time period when there really wasn't any real major change in ideas about disease. And in my answer, I'm going to try and explain why that was. One of the things I'm going to talk about there in my answer is that microscopes were not really good enough at that point to provide a clear image. So it was very difficult to study microbes well and understand where they came from. In my second main paragraph, I'm going to talk about Pasteur's germ theory. Now, as you know, Pasteur came up with a brilliant new idea about microbes. He said that microbes cause liquids and foods to decay, and he proved that in a series of experiments. He also said that microbes might be the cause of disease, but he was unable to prove this. So did this lead to a rapid change in ideas? Well, not in Britain. In Britain, ideas changed only very slowly, and that's because many doctors were slow to accept Pasteur's ideas. So in my answer, I'm going to talk about why there was some change here, but why that change was very slow. So I'm going to explain how Pasteur was helped by better microscopes, which allowed him to study microbes and understand them. On the other hand, I'm going to explain that Pasteur could not prove that germs cause disease, and that powerful doctors in Britain, like Bastian, opposed Pasteur's work, and they stuck to the theory of spontaneous generation. So change happened, but change happened quite gradually. And in my final main paragraph, I'm going to talk about Koch's work on microbes. Now, Koch made huge developments in this area. He proved that specific microbes cause specific diseases. And although Pasteur had a theory about that, Koch actually proved it. He also identified some deadly microbes like tuberculosis, cholera and anthrax. And on top of this, he came up with a lot of better ways of studying microbes. For example, staining them with dye, growing them in petri dishes on agar jelly. So was this rapid change? I think it was. Other scientists were convinced by Koch's work because he managed to prove his findings through scientific experiments, mostly conducted on animals. And other scientists picked up Koch's methods and began to use them. They began studying microbes for themselves, and they began racing to identify other microbes too, like diphtheria and plague. And in this paragraph of my answer, I'm going to try and explain why change was so rapid here. Here are some things that I might talk about. I know that at this point in time, France and Germany were rivals, and they were racing against each other to try and develop new aspects of science and technology. Another factor that I might talk about here is that Koch had scientific proof from his experiments to back up his ideas, and that made his work convincing. Finally, I might also talk about some of the new technology which Koch used, including those dyes which were produced by industry and Petri dishes which were invented by Joseph Petri and relied on the development of better glass making techniques. So there's some new technology here which helped this change to happen fast. So here's my completed paragraph plan. I'll write a little introduction, then I'm going to write a paragraph about spontaneous generation. I'm going to write a paragraph about Pasteur's germ theory and a paragraph about Koch's work on microbes. At the end, I'm going to write a short conclusion and I'm going to come to an overall decision. Was this a period of rapid change or not?